super panel here. Let's just start with introductions. So Natasha, let's start with you. Just quick introduction of yourself and the company.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Natasha Patel, UK Head of Innovation and Insight for Avison Young. Avison Young is a commercial real estate company, 5,500 people across 16 markets globally, covering a range of services from building consultancy, valuation, project management, occupier solutions, as well as traditional leasing agency and capital markets. My team's responsible for market analytics, thought leadership and consultancy, and providing data-driven insight through our proprietary data and technology platform, Avant.
Brilliant. Martin.
Thanks, Richard. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Martin Betts. I'm the Vice President for Europe, Middle East and Asia for NTrust Infotech. NTrust, we specialize in the digitization of all real estate data from any asset class and in any country. We have over 1,100 employees currently. We're HQ'd in LA with offices in Chennai and the UK. Perfect.
Lukas.
Hello everyone, my name is Lukas Balik and I'm CEO and co-founder of Spaceflow. And what we do, we are a tenant experience solution. We basically build features across 3 key verticals: digital operations, sustainability and community. We are a team of 55. We have live buildings and projects across 18 countries. So I'm happy to share some of the experience we have from all these projects.
Great. I suppose let's just pick up with a straightforward one to begin with. Just in terms of the changes that we've seen, obviously there's been a big focus on innovation, technology. I suppose, have you seen that accelerating? What's the situation that you're seeing there? Let's start with you, Natasha.
I think we've seen a significant change in the way that data has been used over the past couple of years. There's been an absolute sort of plethora of data come to the market, both paid for and open source, which really allows us to dig far deeper into spaces and places, asset level, which to help us to understand how buildings are functioning, how spaces are being used. And I think that's a huge change that we've seen in the market, in that our occupier clients and our investor clients are looking for far more in terms of data and due diligence around what's happening with their assets, particularly when they're underwriting investment decision making. And we're seeing such a huge demand for that coming through.
Okay, good. And let's just pick that up as well with you, Martin. And for those who are wondering, although I do have a brother called Martin, this Martin is not that. Martin, let's huge changes as well in terms of what occupiers are looking for, what clients are looking for, investors are looking for. So maybe just characterize some of the changes you've seen, and I suppose what you're seeing, and then I'll pick that up with you as well, Lukas.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a real change in what clients want in terms of the actual data itself. I think historically it's very much along the lease information, the financial information, but there is a real change and there's a real shift in what people are now requesting. So very much regarding this ESG data, that's really come to the fore. But quite interestingly, what's happened very recently is it's not just about that energy data. People now are looking at the fabric of the building itself. So because it's important, there's new regulations in place. So is that cladding fire resistant? Is it approved? So, and that data is somewhere in that organization, but often in a manual or sitting in the ether, and they actually require this. And companies are really, really struggling to get hold of this. So we're seeing a change. That lease data is always going to be important, of course. But people now want more, and I think Natasha kind of touched on that as well. But I think you have to think about real estate not just about financials and dates. It's actually about the whole complete construction of the property itself and what's internal of the property.
Okay, good. I just want to pick that up a minute. So that's a real change, and of course that's going to be quite important for embodied carbon, I guess, from your.
Yeah, absolutely. I think.
Oh, actually, that's much closer to you is better. I can hear that much more.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, brilliant.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. I think what you have to think is, if there's data exists within any property or any transaction, any investment, any occupation, You have to get hold of that, and we deal with digitized data, and that data does have to be digitized, because if it isn't, you can't access it. You're not going to read a manual, you're not going to read a piece of paper. Everyone has to realize that any data is important, whatever it may be.
Okay, good. And Natasha, you wanted to pick up on that, I think.
Just slightly away from the ESG topic, but just thinking about some of those other data sets that are sort of non-property related that inform the decision-making process, we're seeing far more requirements around, socio-demographic, economic, transport-related, mobility-related data with regards to decision-making around portfolios. So how well connected is my building? Is it on a flood risk zone? Some of the ESG factors that you've already mentioned, but what's the commute going to be like from my workforce if I change from one location to another? So that kind of request for data is just coming through in streams.
Okay, good. Let's pick this up with you, Lukas, just in terms of some of the changes you've seen, particularly for your business.
So we see in general that the expectations of end users, tenants are changing a lot, and we feel like the real estate owners that we partner with have much more focus on the tenant satisfaction, on the customer service, where you need sort of technology to enable this, right? So that's one trend where I feel like it's really not just about the space itself. And now we're talking not just offices, but also residential. It's all about these amenities and community aspect, which is important also for people living or working in these assets. And I would also say that there is a huge trend and opportunity for landlords to create, empower new brands of real estate, where again the tech part can, or app like we provide, or other Proptech companies can become, a strong element of the digital strategy, and can differentiate landlords to address, target new customers that might have be much more connection, for example, with your brand than if you're just a traditional real estate owner that doesn't have this kind of approach or thinking as a part of the DNA. So the brands in real estate, I feel, have a really strong importance going forward, and it will be the differentiator of who will be able to attract people to buildings, to the assets across the portfolio.
And maybe for those who don't know, just explain a little bit more about, I guess, what it does and how it, how actually that it helps support that.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of our solution that we have, like I said, we have 3 key areas that we focus on. One is the digital operations, so you can imagine everything from day-to-day communication in the building, issue reporting, resource booking, document management. Then you have part of the community where we give you access, of people and users of the building, occupiers, access to the services, local amenities, the residence area, and so on. And then the smart building aspect, digital access to the building, or seamless guest management, or these like data about the air quality or smart metering. All this in app for the end users, so mobile app which can be branded for the landlords, and then in the administration console it's like cockpit where you can navigate, or see all the data about tenant satisfaction, and you can configure all the modules, and you can use it day-to-day operations.
Okay, great. And Natasha, I suppose how important are these kinds of innovations for the real estate side coming through supporting tenants? Because we've been talking a lot in some of the other sessions, particularly around the future of office, for example, around how that's got to be a special place that people go to. And so you've got to provide additional services to attract people into buildings.
I think it's really important, particularly where we're talking now about sort of a hybrid working model. People want a reason to come back into the office. And I know, thinking about our company, we're looking at 2 to 3 days a week, but we need to drive employees back into the office, give them, collaboration spaces. They're thinking about health and well-being. What's the air quality like? What does my commute to the office look like? Even from a talent perspective, the war for talent out there, when we've seen people come who were, trying to recruit, asking questions around, what are our ESG credentials, how are we embracing social value. So these things are all really important to new employees coming in, and they want to see people back in the office. So I think understanding more about how space is being used and how it's being utilized is really, really important.
Okay, good. And you mentioned around the data side there, Martin, and digitization. I guess how much of an issue is there? What's the starting point? Do we have 90% of things digitized? Do we have 10% of things digitized? Where are we and where do we need to get to?
We are a long way away from actually having complete and accurate data. So at NTrust, we do a lot of data audits on people's systems against actually what their portfolio consists of. And an actual figure after looking at many, many systems, an average is that just on a lease side, only 30% of the data in a lease is digitized on average. So 70% of that lease is just sitting on a piece of paper, not being utilized. And to give you even more frightening fact, because obviously we do a lot of lease abstractions, so 35% of all leases we get sent are incomplete. Pages missing, amendments missing from the original contract. So where you hear this a version of the truth statement, you hear from so many technical companies, that's inaccurate because they're starting with a fraction of actually what they need to be actually utilizing to make key decisions on their portfolio.
And so does this create friction is that because actually nobody cares, Martin? Or is it that actually just nobody's done it and this is part of the ongoing digitization process and actually it's causing a friction that people don't appreciate and this could be made far more efficient?
Yeah, I think it's probably a lot of factors why all that data isn't being taken. So one, is it too costly? Two, does it take too much time? And you could argue that could be the case, but often what you find is that the data in the documentation, there's no space in the technology stack for it to actually reside in. So it's all very well taking that data, but if you actually can't utilize it, then it's potentially worthless. So you've got to think about that data, how do I actually have a system that actually will allow me to report on that? So if you look at the main, just from a lease perspective, the main things they miss are the clause information. Dates and the amount of rent, that's standard, it's always taken. But there's a huge amount of clauses in any lease. And whether it's a tenant obligation, a landlord obligation, a mutual. But if you look at what happened in COVID, there were clauses in lots of leases where the landlord had an opportunity to deal with that problem of how to get the rent from the tenant and what could or couldn't they do. Now, if you have that digitized, that's a report and you can deal with it like that. But what you found from the investor community that didn't have that, they were trawling through thousands of leases, page after page, and they miss it because human beings will miss that. So, it's a huge problem because the data just isn't there because for whatever reason, people haven't picked it up or don't want to. But what you do find when people do pick it up, they really see the value of it because their eyes are wide open to actually what their portfolio consists of and how they can manage it. And more importantly, how much more money can they make? What's the opportunity? Because there's always opportunity in data, always.
And just in terms of some of the I guess views on, obviously a much more challenging market at the moment. There's going to be a bigger focus on asset management, those kinds of things, client retention. So does that mean we're going to see more, I suppose, reliance or focus on kind of Proptech solutions, innovation? What's your sense of that, Natasha?
I think if we think about the pandemic, technology provided a great assistance to us understanding people movements, behaviors, particularly in the current environment, understanding how people are behaving, what's driving them to spaces and places is going to be increasingly important from an asset manager's perspective to ensure that the retail unit or the office is functioning in the right way and making sure that the occupier is happy, and from a returns perspective as well.
Okay, good. And have you seen more interest because of the current economic crisis and people beginning to see things as more challenging, or is that not really coming through yet, Lukas?
I feel like it has definitely become a bigger topic for real estate owners, because now more than ever it's really about also staying competitive and providing to end users, customers more than just like a normal space without any amenities and additional services. So definitely we see this trend of growing need and growing demand for the Proptech solutions overall. For us, the driver is definitely the customer satisfaction to understanding the tenant needs. But there are of course other areas like the ESG smart metering topics, where I feel like it's a huge topic these days. Landlords are asking us how to measure it and how we can also show it to the tenants through your app. So this is becoming very, very relevant, and it will be even more going in the future. So again, like we see that real estate companies are becoming digitally driven, which is like inevitable, like in any other businesses, in travel or gastro, any other industries. This has been happening for years already. Now it's also happening in real estate, and that's great. Because it creates the opportunities for the actual innovators of the industry that are pushing the market to new products and offerings from the market.
And you mentioned there energy. It'd be interesting to get your view, Martin and Natasha, as well on energy. Obviously, become a much greater topic. Wasn't. I mean, we've had these discussions around technology innovation, for a number of years, and you see those trends beginning to change. You could see it changing in terms of wellness, certainly in air quality and things like that over the crisis, but almost in none of them, apart from in something very focused on ESG, was energy really the key issue for these. So is that a much more important issue? Because obviously we don't see necessarily energy prices coming down, and there is a bigger focus now on on carbon reduction, certainly.
I definitely think there's a huge focus on energy, and that's a particularly pertinent topic at the moment. Obviously, as you've just mentioned, we did a study recently looking at the, obviously EPC legislation, MEES standards coming into effect next year and in 2030. We did a study looking at the industrial marketplace in the UK. 80% of buildings will be non-compliant by 2030 in the industrial market. Clearly, there's a lot that needs to be done there in terms of getting those buildings up to spec. You might be thinking about, what are the cost implications versus, putting in the capital from a retrofitting perspective. With energy prices unlikely to move in the near term, it's something that you need to think about. On the balance side of that, construction costs are increasing. So that whole piece needs to be looked at and weighed up. And I think data and technology will have a huge part to play in kind of figuring out what that looks like.
Okay, good. And Martin, how much of that data is already there, easily accessible by investors? Is that something that they've already got?
That's a difficult question to answer. There are elements of that data there. I wouldn't say that all of that data is there. So there's a lot of like energy management systems out there now in the marketplace, and that's starting to get a little bit flooded, I think. So these systems are now being taken up by the owners of the building, and so that is giving them far more visibility on what's actually happening. But actually, agree with Natasha about it's not just about the energy; it's about the whole compliance of the actual building as well. And it probably comes back to what I said earlier. It's not just understanding what the building is doing; it's actually why is the building doing that. And there's so many more component parts of data, and that's where the owners don't have it. So the compliance issue, the structure, that really isn't there within the business. So they're never going to actually maximize their savings on energy because the data isn't available to them. And what's also important is where they can get that data, they have to ensure that they can link it in into their own internal systems. Because otherwise you've just got lots of silos of information around your portfolio, with one building doing X, another building doing Y, but as a business, you're just looking at silos of information. You need to look at the whole impact of that whole energy management piece and the compliance of those buildings as well. And at the moment, that isn't there, because there's not enough transparency between technical suppliers in real estate.
Okay, good. I mean, it'd be interesting because to pick up a little bit on the challenges that everybody's seeing in the market at the moment. So let's start with you, Lukas. I mean, what are you seeing as the challenges, I guess, for you being able to operate, to take your solution out to others? Where are you seeing issues?
I feel like the big topic is that the Proptech market is very fragmented. That there are a lot of solutions across all the verticals of property technology, and I completely understand how difficult it might be for customers, our clients, to like orientate in this spectrum of solutions. So I feel like the answer to this, or how to address it, is to build always an ecosystems around your ecosystem of products with a very clear strategy of what do you want to achieve with the solutions. For example, who will be the solution, which will be the solution with all the master data, that they will collect all this tenant satisfaction data or data from access controls across all the assets in the portfolio. Have a really clear expectations of the why I'm digitizing my assets, digitizing portfolio, and who are the right partners that are with me on this journey, because it's a journey. When we were starting Spaceflow, I had the feeling like it will be so fast, to digitize real estate also like scale up from one building to the whole portfolios. It takes time, and we understand it. We cannot speed it up, and that's why we should be in this journey together with not just our clients, but also with other solutions that are creating a strong alliances together. For example, we are part of one together with our investor in Sweden, Hida. They are building an ecosystem of Proptech solutions that they will eventually go public together. So this ecosystem is providing like an end-to-end solution, a one-stop shop for landlords to pick really all the solutions they need from one umbrella, which I think is really good example of how the market of Proptech solutions should operate, not just being individualistic, but really being part of a bigger ecosystems.
Yeah, that's interesting, because one of the questions that I've often seen coming up in my conversations with investors, which is, a lot of these, there's a huge number of different solutions out there. Many of them are under 36 months old. How do I know what to choose? Because I've got to make a decision around these things. I would like to use them, but how do I know which ones to use? And Martin, how do you see that? Because actually, I mean, I think the point made there is quite interesting, that if you can combine some of these things together, it makes an easier decision and maybe moves a little bit of that challenge away.
There's a lot of great Proptech out there. Really innovative solutions, really solving a problem, and a lot of these problems are just isolated problems. So it's there to solve one specific problem, which is part of the greater good. And all tech companies, and that includes myself, Lukas, and any other tech company, we need to be more collaborative. It's not our system is best, I don't want to talk to you. They have to talk to each other at all times, because at the end of the day, clients have different needs. So an occupier will have a different need to an investor, but also departments within that company are all going to have different needs as well. So by having a non-collaborative approach, we'll just stifle technology within the real estate sector, because all these great ideas are going to get lost, because these guys are going to go out of business, because they can't have all these silos of systems in their office. So for real estate to move forward from an innovation perspective, we have to come together and respect other people's technologies and get them talking to each other in a seamless way. It has to happen, because we're going to lose lots of great brains out there.
Okay, good. Natasha, interested to get your view on that. But also, you mentioned at the beginning one of the data solutions that you were working on, and obviously data is very key to that. So it'd be good as well to get a sense of what kind of data that provides, how granular is that, how does that help?
So I'll answer that in two trains, if I may, starting with the first one. So we are interested in any location-based data set across North America, Europe, and the UK, which will essentially help provide context around portfolio decision-making, whether it's transport-related, mobile phone data, population, demographic, any kind of data set in that respect. The challenge with that is that if we think about North America, the market's incredibly transparent in terms of not only CRE information, but just generally the information that's available out there. As we move east, we face a different challenge with regards to the availability and transparency of those markets. The UK is slightly more transparent than North America, but as you head into Europe, particularly as it relates to CRE information, there just isn't that same level of transparency. So if you've got a global client looking at North America, also wanting to look at the availability of those same data sets in the UK and Europe, you don't get that same picture. And that's one of the challenges that we're facing, which is, whatever the data set might be, you want to have that similar approach across the globe. And that's sometimes a challenge. And knitting those data sets together to form a cohesive view is also sometimes a challenge.
And presumably that then helps inform decisions around investment, because you're looking at a much larger data set to inform what's happening in a way.
And also from an occupational perspective, one of the questions that we've been asked recently is if we're thinking of moving from location A to location B, yes, you can tell us what that commute time is going to look like for our workforce, but what's the carbon? What's the impact on carbon impact? Looking at it from in one market, you can look at it in the UK, but how will that change in France or Germany or Poland as well? So,
okay, good. And just in terms of the trends that we're seeing, obviously there's slowdowns in some of the deals, for example, but are we, do we see that some of this innovation, some of this tech is going to actually speed up some of these processes, make the market more efficient, take friction out of the market? What do we see the purpose and the future in a way of some of this technology? How are we going to be using it?
So I go
it's
first?
A big question, I know, but
I think, definitely technology is going to drive improved process. There's no question, and don't underestimate the improvement of process, because it's just going to save you an absolute fortune. Because for decades, the real estate industry have just thrown people at a problem, and that's not very cost effective. Whereas throwing technology at a problem will increase process, and it allows those people to actually go and do the jobs they've been employed to do, and not dealing with these little data problems. So by taking on tech, process is going to drive everything from a profitability perspective, but also actually an accuracy perspective as well, because humans will make mistakes, whereas technology has been built to try and not make mistakes. It will make mistakes, of course, but there'll be less mistakes, so the quality of data is always going to be improved, again, for you to make better decisions on your portfolio.
Okay, good, yeah.
Short answer from me, real-time analytics will yes, provide efficiencies from the property management functioning of a building. So yes, you can see absolutely how that's going to create efficiencies and cost savings. From an investment decision-making process, particularly in the current climate, no, that process is elongated at the moment. So data will inform the decision-making, but I don't think it's going to make it any quicker.
Okay, good. And Lukas, from your point of view, what are you seeing, I suppose, there? There's been a lot of discussion around future of office and those kinds of things. Is that making it more sticky for a tenant? Does that mean they'll stay in their lease longer? Does it enable people to be able to sell additional services? I suppose, what are the advantages there, and how are you going to build on that?
Yeah, fully agree that tech will be now here to really drive the effective operations. That's I think the key and must. And then on top of that, it serves as this kind of differentiator, where using tech, you can really help to bring more customer service, and like we discussed, all the amenities bring closer to the end users. Because what we need to realize, and we always try to explain to real estate owners, that their customer is actually the end user, the individual, or the occupier, and that's what, thanks to also technology, you can really understand him or her better because you know their needs. So definitely this will help to bridge, let's say, the gap between how real estate owners feel about things, that where we should be heading, and what are the actual expectations of people using the spaces, and how, for example, also the future investment should look like, because it will be driven together with the community of tenants across the buildings in the portfolios.
Okay, good. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask or anything they want to contribute? Feel free to raise your hand if you do, or somehow signal to me that you do want to do that. I just wanted to, I guess, pick up on something looking forward. I guess when we're looking at it, what do you see as sort of, I guess let's pick one trend. What do you see as the key trend that is going to be driving innovation, is going to be driving technology? And I suppose, where do you see us in 5 years' time or 3 years' time? Or, I mean, we've seen quite a lot of growth in terms of the last couple of years, I think, anyway. So where are we heading?
I think the biggest trend, or I think the hot topic as it currently stands, is around ESG. There are some significant climate targets that we as an industry have committed to, and I think data and technology will support the sort of positioning around how we achieve those targets.
Okay, good. Martin?
Yeah, I think what we're definitely seeing is that people have talked about it for data for years, big data, we've heard it so many times, but people now are actually starting to realise that it is actually important, because they're seeing wins now by just having small data projects where they're seeing efficiencies and seeing cost savings and seeing profits. So I think that's just going to snowball now, because the data is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We're taking data from more and more areas, and people are now seeing the real value of that. And so that's where it's going to go, because we're getting more and more requests every single day, and it's from every different sector of the real estate market. It's not just investors, it's occupiers, it's property managers. Everyone understands now that if I don't have the data, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble in the future.
Okay, good. Lukas?
Definitely ESG, sustainability, big yes. Then I would also add, be like Matt, create a really strong brand that helps you to power the experiences for your occupiers, and focus on tenant satisfaction, because at the end of the day, we need to attract people to really be a love brand, build product of real estate that people like to use, no matter if it's a residential or a commercial project. We need to make it relevant for today's world, and that's why we're here.
Great, really interesting discussion.